And what they would do is they would send up, once these, it's astonishing this, I saw this happen hundreds of times, probably thousands. Once the entity would basically ask forgiveness in the name of the Lord, in the name of Jesus, they would immediately go out of the body and out to this hospital to be treated with love, light and colour. As would the other one that was shackled up and trapped all those hundreds of years that had given free will away. And they go up and the medium would just come back in their body like that. And then they would bring the medium back to this frequency, and that was it. And they would say, well, what was that like? It was a nasty piece of work, and so on. So the wonderful thing about it, from my point of view, is that although this woman, for example, had this problem, is that there are many, many other souls, entities, bad ones, whatever, that are also in need of help. They're just offbeat. They have just as much right as that woman to give birth to a child and so forth. So that's what can happen, is that someone's got a problem, it can involve about it is you can send them all up to this hospital. So that's what I was doing in Brazil, and it was brilliant because I was there for about a year and a half. They gave me an interpreter for like over a year because my Portuguese wasn't that good at all. But in the end, I was starting to get it. I was really starting to get the hang of this, what was going on, because I knew the format and my Portuguese was improving. So I was very blessed that I lived with the president and his wife for all that time, and I got a really great education. And he, the president, was a brilliant mind, just a brilliant mind. And he used to give me lessons in the morning, 7 to 9. He liked to do them early, so that's what we did. And I started to learn an awful lot more about this. So what happened is that they always say, don't ever do this, what I'm talking about. This is something you don't do. You really don't do it, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can get in serious trouble. And people said to me, Ray, you can't say that. Yeah, well, I'm saying it, because it's true. You don't do this alone, and they only ever did it in a group. Now, where it got a little bit different for me was when I ended up, I had just spent, I think it was like just over a year in Brazil, when I went back to England, and I had this lady that was my working partner. She was brilliant. She was just brilliant. She was gifted from all her life, and when I first met her, that's another story. Anyway, she was brilliant, and there was another friend of mine, and this other lady that had originally got me out to Brazil. So there was 4 of us, and they said, well, look, can we do this? And I said, well, if we're going to do it, we do it properly. So we're going to have to really understand what we're dealing with here. This isn't a joke, and we've got to get it right, and everyone got it. So for about 7-8 weeks, we did these sessions where we would, I would educate them about the astral realms and how these things work, in a bit more depth than what I'm talking about now. So then we were ready to do our first session to help people to. So anyway, we went through this. I said, well, look, each one of us needs to go in the hot seat and clear our own fluff and stuff up. Wow. It was a really unpleasant seat. The hot seat was right. It was, all this stuff would come out of all of us, and we're like, oh, God. We're squirming. It was horrible. Anyway, a friend of mine, one of the ladies here, she was an older lady, and what had happened was that, this is going to sound right out there, but this is what happened. What happened was that this lady was so brilliant, my working partner, that she was able to tune my friend to a frequency where he could see spirit guides. She was just that brilliant, right? And he hadn't done this before. So what he saw was that she was literally leaking energy out of her arm. Now, you have the physical, the etheric. Now, in between the etheric and the astral, you have this organ. It's called the Buddhic web. And it's basically an electromagnetic mesh that surrounds the body, and it basically keeps you in your envelope of who you are. When this leaks, you're just forever whacked out. And if it really is terrible leaks and everything else, you can die. So it needs to be repaired if this is leaking. So I'm putting the energy in, hands on the top of it. She's leaking it. It's just leaking out. And my friend said, oh, gosh, she's leaking energy. And I looked and I went, I haven't said, well, you're right. And I said, well, hang on a minute, this is a really serious case now. Because they repair this in a garden house in Brazil, but the only way you can do it is through Christ consciousness. Now, years before, I had been given I've got to say this because it's relevant. I was laying in bed, and this voice said, "So you like to get high, do you?" And I'm like, "Oh." I went, and they go, "Well, get ready, because here it comes." I'm like, "Oh gosh, Anyway, I came out of my body and I'm looking down at myself. And it's like, wow, this is astral projection. I've done a lot of LSD and stuff. I'm like, I know it. Wow, it's astral projection. So, next thing I know, wow, there's Jesus right there in front of me. Oh my gosh, now I thought Jesus was a fallacy that was put there by the religions to basically dominate and subjugate in some ways. And I went, oh my gosh, I've really got that wrong. So sorry. And I went to fall on my knees, and he went, no, we work in a partnership, you and I. And there were 4 gentlemen that were in biblical attire that had different things, like a cripple, a leper, someone was blind, and something else. So we were doing this like healing, where we were like flying around with all these colours, and I'm like, yeah, this is fantastic. And each one, and every time we came to one, he would say these words. He said, the prodigal son, the healer, the teacher, and the chosen one. And I'm like, okay, I'm just loving it, so this was going on, and we healed all 4 of them. Then he looks at me with all this beautiful, radiant love, and bang, I'm back in my body. And I'm like, wow, that was just never anything like that. It was just astonishing. From that point on, Jesus was in my life. So whenever I close my eyes, I see Jesus. Now, I couldn't quite get my head around this because I know how flawed I am. And I know, I'm like, all the things I've done, Jesus, come with me. But then again, I get it, why not? Why would he not come to me? He'll come to anyone. Just because I'm doing these things, I'm learning, I'm a young guy doing all these things. So, Jesus comes to me, and Jesus is my main guide. Now, it doesn't mean to say that I consider myself like a Christian as regards what goes on in churches and stuff like that, because I don't even understand it. All I know is, I do it. That's all I know. It's not to condemn or this or that. I don't understand what religious things are about. I know nothing about theologies and stuff like that. You lose me in the first sentence. But all I do know is that I am a spiritual healer, and Jesus comes to me just like that, because that's the gift I've been given, and I try and do justice to that. So, back to the story of where this woman's leaking energy. So she's leaking energy, it's coming out, and I've got my hands on it, and my friends go, oh, look at that, she's leaking energy. I said, well, look, this is serious now, because this really is serious. So I called Jesus, and I said, Jesus, please, if ever there's a time to help, please, 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 can you come for us now? And my friend goes, oh, there's Jesus to my right. And I'm like, yeah, there he is, just like he always is. And he's going, and he's wearing his robes, and he has this beard, and I'm going, yeah, now's not the time to get into the description of what he's wearing. We're working. This is time to work. So Jesus comes round, and I've got my hands there. And that's right, so he's there. And then what he does is, the other one of my main guides is the Merlin. Merlin from the Glastonbury thing, and not Glastonbury, the Arthurian legends and all that. And I thought, oh, gosh, this is all so cliche. Yeah, that's who I get. And he deals with all the anomalies linked to any entities, any alchemy, any magic, stuff like that. He's just like a flash of the wand, and he sorts it all out. And I see these, I don't go in there now, but when I used to deal with this earlier days, I used to go into these battles against the bad and the good.